This is the second and final part of the Ecto-7 build. For those who missed the first video, I got the goofy idea of taking one of these Matchbox K-7 racing car transporters and making it into a Ghostbusters type vehicle. This is the Ghostbusters Ecto-1. And somehow merging them together and making the Ecto-7 Ectoplasm transport vehicle. So this is where we ended the first video. It was still pretty rough, but it was taking shape. And so we'll pick up from this point. It needed still a lot of body work, and so there was still a lot of spot putting that needed to be done, sanding, more spot putting, more sanding. There was a lot of sanding on this vehicle. It's a big vehicle. It's not like a little tiny Matchbox or Hot Wheels car. There's a lot of body to work on this thing. So I just kept at it. And I ended up doing this so many times it wasn't funny. It was it was kicking my butt. But I finally got it where I wanted it, and then it was time to pay attention to details. I wanted the tail lights from that original Ecto-1. And so I basically take a lot of the parts off of that vehicle and merge them onto this K-7 body. This, I'll admit up front, this is an exceptionally long video. I apologize for that. A lot of this, you'll notice I will have sped up sections up to 3 times the normal speed. Because when I went to edit this video, this second video, I had something like, I don't know, an hour and a half of video, an hour and 45 minutes of video, and I didn't film everything. There were huge processes I left out, like painting the car. I didn't cover that. I did use a Rust-Oleum paint to paint it that white. I did go over it with a clear. Here you see, I'm happy with how the paint turned out. It hid a lot of the flaws pretty well. Admittedly, this thing did kick my butt, and there are still some flaws in the body that I at some point I had to draw a line in the sand and say, this thing has to get finished. As many of you know who saw the earlier video, and that video was pretty far into the process of constructing it, I've been working on this thing for months off and on. And it's one of those projects that it's just a little daunting. As you're working on it, you realize you don't realize how close to the finish you are at sometimes, just because you look at it and you can't wrap your head around it. It's just overwhelming. So we'll go through the rest of the vehicle here. It was fun to do. I mean, I'm really happy with the end results. I hope you are too. But it's also one of those things where just because it can be done doesn't mean it should be done. And yeah, I didn't like somehow shove a Miata into the middle of this thing. But by the same token, way back when this first started, this concept, I was just kind of joking around. And it looked like the two body pieces might go together. And I was just joking in a way. And then it was kind of like, well, maybe this isn't a joke. Maybe this can happen. And so it did. and I know some of you are going to shake your heads. Here I'm test fitting a lot of these little pieces. Those fins are actually rubber. They're very flexible, and looking back on it, it might have been best to try casting those in resin. When I think back to changes I might have made to the vehicle now, looking back on it now, from where it was when I started, that's one of the things I might have done a little differently. When I went to finalize putting those on, and I don't even recall if I show you that part. Here I'm just testing them. but it's weird how they almost shrank a little bit. And so where the holes were, there's 3 pins on each of those rubber pieces that go into the body. And where those rubber pins go in, it's like it once they were off the original Ecto-1 casting that I took them from, it's like they shrank. So it was a matter of gluing it in stages, putting the first pin in and then letting that set with super glue, and then pulling it and putting the second pin in, and the same for the last final pin. Here on the base, Lord knows there's a ton of JB Weld on this build, and those of you who know I love using JB Weld are probably pretty proud of me for how I've increased the weight of this vehicle. And for those of you who want a kick in the pants, be sure to check out the very end of this video, where I put the original K-7, an unmodified K-7 on a scale, and this one on a scale. And let's just say I've added a little heft to it. So I ended up, I used the wheels from the K1 casting. I ended up having to get 2 K1s, or excuse me, Ecto-1s, to use the wheels. I used axle tubes, and so what I'm doing here is I had cut the axle tubes that I wanted down to size, and then I just tacked them in place at first with the JB Weld very lightly to test them out, to make sure they were exactly where I wanted them to be. And then once I had them in place, I just covered the heck out of them with JB Weld. And that actually worked pretty well. It worked pretty well to keep them in place, to handle the girth of this vehicle. Yeah, this is a big boy. This thing is a solid vehicle. Something that I hadn't mentioned to anybody on either the Facebook group or on the community page here. I hadn't mentioned to anybody. I actually dropped this thing. Once I had completed painting it, it was almost finalized. It hadn't been clear coated yet as far as the body goes. And I dropped this thing onto the hardboard floor I have covering a carpet in the area where I work. And it hit very solidly, and naturally I freaked out. I was worried about it. And unlike some of the putties that if they hit the ground, they probably would have shattered, this thing, I'm lucky it didn't make a dent in that hardboard floor. It took that shot like nothing. So, yeah, fortunately, all of the little details hadn't been added yet. This was early on in finishing it, so nothing broke off of, detail-wise. None of that was on there. It was just the casting itself and, the modifications to the body I made. But here we are using one of my strengths, JB Weld. And, it worked really well as usual. I cannot complain about how solid the results always are with JB Weld. And that's what I use to hold the vehicle together. As I showed in the earlier video, some of the openings, like on the back of the truck, the like tailgate area, and the side doors on the original K1 casting that I merged into this K7 casting. Those pieces I covered with tin, and then I covered the tin with JB Weld inside and out. And it is ridiculously strong, as expected. But I'm just going to take you through the vehicle here, and you'll see how it went. I did paint the base black after I was through, once everything had set up. Naturally, I test fitted the wheels again after they were finalized with all of that additional JB Weld. Thank God I did. They didn't shift somehow. I did the front glass on the original K7, like it seems like on all the K7s, is cracked. So I ended up cutting a piece out of a blister pack of just thin plastic. I had made that pattern from when I did the earlier K7 Dragster. That is a separate video. That pattern I just kept and used it again on the blister pack. Works really well to make a nice thin light interior windshield for the truck. One thing I didn't realize, I now have a few I've picked up. William Robinson, Mr. K7, sent me one K7 early on. The one that I surprised him with turning I ended up getting a second one, turning it into a dragster. It's a long story. You'll see that video if you go back and check it out. But on one of the K7s I've bought since then, I didn't realize that the interior tools on the Matchbox plastic interior, it does have these tools on there. They're actually chrome. I don't know if they are on all of the castings that they do, but one of the ones I had, those are in chrome. The ones I've seen, except for this one, that had all rubbed off somehow or just somehow flaked off. I'm not sure how they would because it's pretty protected inside. Excuse me. But as on the earlier video I did, this one I went over that detail with the silver Sharpie pen, and then I'm using the toothpick to clean up the excess. That always seems to work pretty well. And then because the Ecto-1 original Ghostbusters vehicle and now this Ecto-7 Ectoplasm transport and containment vehicle has red details on it, and obviously the Ghostbusters logo has red on it, I thought it'd be great to paint the seats red. You can tell this is really sped up. I think that this section is at 3 times normal speed. I have a hard enough time painting fine detail as it is, let alone this quickly. For the decals on the sides and on the back of the Ecto-7, I was able to find the Ghostbusters logo, and they're nail decals. They're fingernail decals. And those of you who saw the recent Bonaducci edition of the GTO for the 3 Blind Mice build, I used fingernail decals for that. And here I am using them again. And I don't know. I guess the stylish young woman who wants to show her fandom of Ghostbusters wears these things. And so it's amazing the amount of decals that are out there in a variety of themes for fingernails. I had no clue. And check it out for yourself. Go on eBay, go on Amazon, check it out. You'll be amazed. They work fantastic on cars. So don't hesitate to use them. And Lord knows if you can't find any stock decals in a pattern you want, check out fingernail decals. I did use microset on the decals. They worked really well. I probably would have tried printing them myself if I hadn't found those, but they were cheap enough. It's like, why reinvent the wheel? As you can see at this point, I have the stripes on the side. The fins are rubber, as I mentioned earlier, and then I hand painted the stripes, taking them up to the doors, masked it off with Tamiya masking tape, and just hand painted those using Citadel paint. The Citadel paint color, I don't have a lot of colors available to me right now, and it wasn't an exact match for the fins. So what I ended up doing was basically going over the fins with that Citadel paint lightly, just hitting some of the highlights, that kind of thing, to make it match a little better. And I think I pulled it off pretty well. The contrast between the two colors, or the difference between the two colors, isn't nearly as great as it appeared at first when I first did the stripes. There's part of me that regrets not trying to make that back half open, that back hatch area, but that would have been such a bear. And ended up going with, in my mind, I had this concept that this wasn't to be a vehicle transport, as the K-7 originally is, that this was basically for them as they capture ectoplasm out there, to safely store it and transport it. And so the Ecto-1 would still be running around. They'd get their slime, they'd open the side doors, and they'd put it in the back, which also leads to something I do here a little later. And we'll go over that. This top portion of the vehicle is off the Ecto-1 casting. And it's also rubberized. It's an odd material. It's not exactly plastic. It's not exactly rubber. It is somewhere in between. So paint doesn't adhere really well to it. The colors, a lot of those colors you're seeing there are the original colors off the original casting. And then it didn't have enough detail for it. There was detail in the molding of that piece, but they just hadn't painted it. So, the red was there, the green was there. Those colors, that silver up in the front was there. The yellow on these tanks on the side was there. Otherwise, there wasn't any other detail. And I thought, well, if you're going to have that detail, why not draw attention to it? So I went ahead and hit it with the Sharpie pen. I have those Sharpie pens in like 3 different colors, silver, gold, and brass. When I bought them, they came in a 3-pack, and it was perfect selection. I couldn't have asked for them to have a better combination. They didn't throw in, when you go to buy a lot of these things and they'll throw in some putrid color. This one, they hadn't. So getting back to that thought of transporting ectoplasm, containing and transporting it, a while back at a thrift store, I picked up a bunch of these little train car pieces. They were ridiculously cheap, and I wasn't sure what I was going to use them for. I originally was thinking something in a Gaslands theme, post-apocalyptic theme. But then I was looking at this and I was like, hey, had to cut it down to make it fit in the back of the K-7. But that's easy enough. This thing's just plastic. So got out the X-Acto saw, cut that sucker up, I took that chunk out up at the top left to get it down to size. And got it the size I wanted. Glued that end cap back on once I had it reasonably flat. My cut wasn't the best cut in the world. And so I just had to sand it down so it would fit a little better. And I got out the cement, hit that, let it weld those two pieces together. And I was cooking. I had the added piece that I wanted. Oddly enough, you can see this in the back of the finished product. It doesn't stand out like mounting it on the top or mounting it on the back. But it's just another one of those little added touches that makes me smile when I look at this thing. Yep, there's the Sharpie pins again. You see me using the Sharpie pins on this. I ended up shooting it with a rust. I rattle can everything. And so I rattle canned it with this rust colored Krylon paint that I have. So this actually isn't the finished product here. I ended up shooting it with the rust and basically going it over it again, like you're seeing here. I did do this again. You see the green slime. Oh, actually here at this point I had hit it with the rust spray, as I recall. And so I couldn't resist adding some of the slime leaking out of the vehicle. And so there's a Citadel paint color that's kind of a green. It's over there to the right of the screen. It's it's like Wagah flesh. And so Lord only knows what kind of flesh this is. I love the names on the Citadel paints. They're just fantastic. You have to laugh when you grab them because it's like, and someone did explain to me what they were tied to. There is a connection to these colors, but you have to laugh. So I'm really happy with the interior. You know, a lot of the details hidden naturally, but it also helps make the vehicle, and you'll see those seats through the front windshield. The steering wheel was already white on this. The top has a little bit more added detail to it now. And then, naturally, what's next? Yep, gauzy. And it's interesting because this is the back window from the original K1 casting. It's kind of big, as you can see. But it was cloudy. And it was new. This was a new vehicle that I took this from. But it was still cloudy. And putting it in the gauzy cleared that right up, as you'll see in the end results. But I also had a goofy idea. Everybody knows how much I love gauzy because it's a heavy coating. It's a very thick coating. It levels out wonderfully on the windshields. It makes a dramatic improvement in my mind. But then I got this goofy idea. As you may recall, I did cut the original windshield for this, the front windshield. This is the back of the car. The front windshield I cut out of blister pack. And it's the first time I've ever tried dipping it in gauzy. I've done this before. I did it on the dragster where I cut out a windshield. And, you know, I've cut things out of these thin plastic blister packs and, you know, just thin plastic packaging before. But I thought, why not dip it in gauzy? One of the best things I've done. It gave it more strength and it gave it more clarity. I couldn't have been more surprised at the results because this was just a goofy idea. But this whole build is a goofy idea. I'm sure there's people out there, serious builders out there, that are just shaking their heads. But yeah, well, I can't explain it. Sometimes I just throw crap together that shouldn't be thrown together. But I'm having fun doing it, and I hope you're having fun watching this. And if it makes you shake your head, that's great. That's if if you're sitting there and you're thinking, this is the funniest thing I've seen, I've got to give it a thumbs up, great. If you think this is an abomination and the worst crap I've ever seen, at least I'm getting a reaction. And if you give it a thumbs down, God bless you. You know, it's like, um, you know, I'm not offended by your thumbs down. I do appreciate the thumbs up, and either way, I hope it makes you smile. Fortunately, this little tank, you know, it was designed for it was from a train car. It had a hole in the bottom and a little post that I could use to mount it. So couldn't have asked for a better mounting thing. I had to just come up with styrene. I used that is actually a raft from a 3D print, and so you know there's no garbage. Every scrap can find a way to be used. I had to figure out how to get that thing to fit in there, but I figured it out. You know, with enough cutting and enough enough super glue, you can make anything happen. And JB Weld, of course. But got it in there. Yeah, there we go. Ended up JB welding it in place. I couldn't mount it in at this point because I still needed to put the top window in. I needed to put the top the lights, the top accessory. And so there I'm putting in the front windshield. I end up crazy gluing or super gluing that into place. And I apologize for the times that I'm checking it out here and you see my head pop into the bottom of the shot. I got a big fat head and it keeps finding its way into the picture. And my vision, I need to get really close to see some of this stuff sometimes. So here we go. We're doing the final assembly. We're getting this little guy thrown together. And here's where we started. A regular K-7, that's what it looks like. And I had a goofy idea. And sometimes the goofiest ideas are the most fun. Now this beast on the end, once all these modifications are made, the turntable doesn't work quite as well. So it was killing the poor little turntable. So it needed a little help. And I end up, you'll see the manual turntable later as well. It rolled off. Before I had it on this one, I had it on another little turntable I have, and it rolled off of that, and I thought, oh, heck no, I'm not going to screw this thing up now. So here it is. There's a lot more shots of it here up ahead. Some glamour shots, outdoor shots, all kinds of shots. And the scale shots are at the end as well. Oh, here's the manual turntable. I hope you guys had as much fun with this thing as I did. Hope you enjoy the video. To my subscribers, thank you very much. I hope you were looking forward to this one, and I'm glad I finally got it done. This is heading off to William Mr. K-7 Robinson for his collection. I hope he's happy to add it to the group. It's a huge collection. So, oh, there you can see the tank in the back. And there you can get a better view of the seats. I'm happy with this thing. So hope all of you are too. Thank you very much to my subscribers. If you're not a subscriber, think about it. And maybe sign up. And they won't all be like this. They won't all be this involved. Some will be simple. Some will be crazy. I guarantee you some will be crazy. But thank you all so much. Everybody stay safe out there. Stay happy, healthy. Keep watching. See you in the next one.